Hi, dosto. I was, I was doing some work, right? And I was, and this thing came to my mind, right? That whenever, I go somewhere, maybe, to a new office for an internship, or, maybe I'm out, alone, and I'm somewhere, and there's, there's, there's this situation where, I have this opportunity to maybe talk to someone new, make a good connection. You know, I hesitate a lot, and and I think this is something which is very common and very normal among us. You know, for a generation who has been over the internet, and I've seen people that are so different. Their personality is so different. In real life, when it is with how they actually are on, online. Uh, and believe me, I used to be very shy, I remember when I went to one of my internships, right? For the first 2 weeks, I couldn't even talk to anyone because I had so much social anxiety that I used to think that, okay, I'll go in, right? Whatever task is assigned to me, I have to do that and come back home. That was all over my mind. And that is how I always been like, I'm a person who is very observant. I'm the person who likes to listen a lot. I'm the person who wouldn't talk a lot. Rather I'll have the other person talk to me, and I listen, and then we have a conversation going on. But this year, I've changed that a lot. Um, you know, when we go in a room, right? Where there's a lot of people, right? We tend to be, we tend to hunch our back. What I do, let's talk about myself. I hunch my back, I look down, I can't even make an eye contact, with the person, with people, of course, because I'm so scared of them. And what I'm scared of is judgment. Now, this thing is so shallow, you know, it is, it is, it is, it is very shallow, also. Because, see, one thing is that everybody, out there, where we are, either they're there to work, or either, they're there to have fun, or, just make connections and talk with each other, right? And, and we think so much sometimes, instead of actually going up to the person and, of course, talking to them, we think a lot. And most of the time, that thinking is a negative consumption of things, right? That we don't. That is, of course, that is, of course, that is not the reality. It is very important. One thing that I have inculcated, you know, is that whenever I meet someone, right, I just go on and introduce myself without really thinking about things, that what they will think, or maybe if I do something wrong, you guys know what I'm trying to talk about, right? That all of us have this problem of overthinking a lot, right? Because of which we lose a lot of opportunities. Now, I feel like, yeah, I mean, maybe, you lose a possible employment. Maybe you lose on a possible opportunity just because you were shy, just because you didn't take that opportunity to, come up and talk to the person, right? Maybe you were underconfident, right? Of course. So, what are we supposed to do, first of all? What I do is, first of all, I don't overthink in this perspective. If I'm out in a new place, suppose I'm on an internship, of course, there's a lot of people, right? Uh, I just go on and introduce myself, talk to them, don't really think a lot of, you know, and look them in their eye. I don't look, down at the floor. I keep my I keep my back straight. I try to be as confident as I could be, and of course, look them in their eye, right? Because we have I was and there's one more thing that I want to point out. I was watching this lecture by Mr. Jordan Peterson, right? He is a professor, um, and very very prominent professor, of course. He and his and in his lecture, he told us about he talked about the fact that people, why they have so much social anxiety, that that they do not look in the eyes of the person that they're trying to talk to, right? They're scared of it. They're scared of the judgment, right? That that something is not going to that something is not going to be according to how they want it to be, or something is going to be not right, right? So it is very important that we look into their eyes and understand as to what's going on. He explicitly stated that we really need to have a conversation with the enemy, so that that person would also tell us what's wrong with us. Of course, XYZ is going to tell us a lot of things, but there's going to be at least one thing that is going to be accurate, and we need to know about that. So, dosto, I think friends, I think it is something to really look upon. And another thing what we can do is expose ourselves. So there can be a lot of triggering points. Now we need to analyze the triggering points. Why why we are getting anxious? Why are we thinking so much? What's the root cause? uh, Maybe we are having so much anxiety during before, or before a job interview, or maybe we are going to give a presentation, and before that we are having a lot of anxiety, right? So we need to understand that, right? And we need to challenge that thinking, that why are we assuming everything to be so negative? Maybe there can be positive outcome. Maybe whatever thing we have prepared, maybe that go well. Maybe we perform very well. Maybe we get this job, or maybe this presentation will go nice. Start thinking in a positive manner, right? And start questioning negative thoughts that may come into your mind, and of course expose yourself to that source, right? If you're anxious related to the presentation, so of course try to give more and more presentation, or try to go on more public speaking things, right? uh, if you are anxious just to talk to a lot of people, for example, if you go to a certain party, and you are just you just have this panic attack wherein you just cannot talk to anybody, you know so try to talk to new people. I know it's going to be very hard, but this is the only way. Expose yourself to your fears. The day when you try to expose yourself to the fears is the day when you succeed and overcome your social anxiety, or any sort of problem you have. You need to focus. You cannot run away from it. And this goes on for everything. You cannot run away from your problems. You need to focus them in life. This is what makes our life beautiful. And one last thing that I really want to say, dosto, is also uh, take very deep breaths. Of course, taking deep breaths is very important. Whenever you feel very anxious, very slow, deep breaths. Regulate yourself, control your mind, body. It really helps. And of course, just be you. Just be you. Just be confident. You know, people. Even if you're going to be shy, and of course you're not going to talk to anyone, people still going to judge you, right? So it's better that we talk to a lot of people and then get judged. Maybe we wouldn't even get judged, because we the person would know how we actually are, right? And the person who is going to judge is, of course, is going to judge. We cannot stop them or prevent that. That's something that is inevitable, right? So it's a long road. Challenging your fears is something which is not an immediate remedy, but it's a step. It's a step towards yourself, and it's a step towards your own mental health and your own confidence, right? Let's be a bit confident in our lives, and I know you can do that for sure. I believe in you, and I trust in you, and I want you to have that believe and confidence in yourself. All right. I try to keep up coming with more videos. Thank you so much for listening to this. That will be it. Thank you.